This video is best viewed on a stereoscopic 3D monitor or with YouTube's cardboard viewing option. For more 3D options, use the Flash Player by clicking the first link in the description. Welcome to Stereo 3D Productions, folks, where we terrorize ourselves for your VR benefit. That's right, Resident Evil 7 in VorpX. Holy crap, I really didn't expect what I got. There's something under the water. There's something in the water. There's gonna be a jump scare. There's gonna be a jump scare. Fuck you, game. Fuck you in advance for the jump scare you're about to deliver to me. Fuck you in advance, fuck you in advance, fuck you in advance. If you're not predictable, you did it go- Hey! Ah! Fuck off! Fuck you! Now, before we get to our horrifying subject of the day, I must remind you that this VorpX tutorial series begins first and foremost with the VorpX Universal Guide. I recommend watching that guide first if you haven't, as it covers a lot of general aspects about VorpX that apply to our game-specific videos like this one. There's a link to the Universal Guide at the top of the description. Also, this video is open for updates. If you ever see the tag outdated between brackets in the title of this video, look for a link to a newer, updated version of this guide in the description. Now, I'm just gonna come out and say it, today's game is fucked. Absolutely fucked. No, it's not broken technically speaking. In fact, the VR support I'm going to demonstrate is pretty decent. But it's seriously one of the most messed up VorpX test sessions I've had in a long time. Not because of any technical issues, oh no. Holy crap, this game blew my mind away completely. From being immensely impressed by the lighting, the working dynamic shadows, the amazing leather and fabric materials, all the way to being absolutely downright terrorized and shocked at the immediate and extreme turn the game takes early on. After the first session, I realized I had to explore options to improve the VR setup if I could, then demonstrate it next on our series because holy crap, as I'd say to a friend, you have to see this. Now for today's guide, I'll be demonstrating a slightly modified approach at the stock VorpX configuration for the game, one that offers 3 resolution options and uses some field of view enhancement to compensate for the game's 90-degree field of view limit. The game seemed to at one point have workarounds for aspect ratio and field of view, but it seems those solutions have now gone defunct, so it really came down to a balancing act with VorpX's own options. Go figure, I always tell people to run their game once without VorpX running. And for Resident Evil 7, it turns out I was so excited I broke that rule. Yeah, it turns out you can do your settings by directly running the game in its very first time in VR. That is rare. Now, whichever way you choose, it doesn't matter, just go through the settings as follows. First and foremost, the resolution. We want a resolution at a 16:9 aspect ratio. Yes, VorpX recommends 1280 by 960 right now, but I'm honestly not quite sure why. The game applies a letterboxing effect if you're not running at a 16:9 aspect ratio. So using 1280 by 960 results in black bars at the top and bottom of your view, which might be okay unless you're trying to use the ambience background effect in VorpX to mask the fact that the field of view isn't quite sufficient, at which point you'll notice the game is actually stamping black bars above and below the image, thus making the background effect useless. I've opted for a 16:9 aspect ratio because this eliminates the black bars without changing how much of the game you'll be able to see. It's possible this will also perform better. Now, I'm going to refer to low, medium, and high end here for resolution options, but keep in mind this game is recent and thus is far more demanding than the norm. I doubt seeing this game running well on a 970, for instance. That being said, the resolution options are 1280 by 720 for low, 1600 by 900 for medium, and 1920 by 1080 for high. Set display mode to windowed. Blast the field of view to the 90-degree maximum and do set VSync to off. In my tests, the low and medium resolution options performed well even while using a bit of resolution scaling. I do not recommend putting the resolution scaling value over 1.5 at the low res, and don't go over 1.3 if you're at the medium resolution. At 1080p, I didn't dare go above 1.1. In fact, that value made enough visual difference that I was happy with it. The resolution scale option pretty much compensates for the fact that this game has no real anti-aliasing method. Speaking of anti-aliasing, in this game it's absolute garbage. All the options are complete trash. Pick SMAA, it's the one that will damage the visuals the least. This is the game with the single worst artificial anti-aliasing techniques I've ever seen, and they do not let us turn it off. Shame, because it would have been of great help here. Depth of field should be off since the anti-aliasing is so botched, combining it with this effect will destroy VR visuals to a blurry mess. Other effects you want to disable: ambient occlusion, chromatic aberration, and black plague. I mean motion blur. Black plague, motion blur. Sorry, I always confuse the two. Subsurface scattering is one of my favorite things to see in VR, not gonna lie. But here's the catch, it's a massive hog. Use this with caution. In fact, I've got mine disabled. As much as I'd like to have this, the game is recent, demanding, and we have to bargain for frame rate in a few places. My volumetric lighting is on low, and I am on a 1080. That's a hint. Be careful with this effect. Yeah, it's beautiful, but it's also a hog. Shadows can also hog up performance, but guess what? They work. They work really well, even the dynamic ones. I left mine on low for the time being. It's not optimal quality, but for once, we have working shadows. Okay, so we have our 16:9 resolution set, field of view, all that jazz. Time to save this. Since I was doing mine on screen, I'll close up the game, fire up my runtimes, VorpX, and go right back into Resident Evil 7 for the following step. The first time you run this game with VorpX, you'll get a warning about needing to restart the game because it's made a configuration change. Do this at least once so that change can take effect. I believe it properly hooks up the head tracking, so you will need it. You can do your configuration from the start of the game next to the car, or even just reload a save and do the changes while you're in the initial room, which for me so far seems to be a safe haven. Press the delete key to bring up the VorpX HUD. Now before we proceed, you'll notice that the VorpX HUD causes the game to slow to a crawl. The menu will also respond slowly. There are two tricks to get around this. First, you can open the game's pause menu before bringing up the VorpX HUD. And secondly, you can simply let it be slow while you input your settings, save and close the heads-up display, and then Alt-Tab out and back into the game, which will resolve the issue. Alright, so we're aware of the slow issue. Let's go into those settings. Under Main Settings, set 3D Reconstruction to Geometry 3D if it isn't already. Set 3D Separation Strength to 0.7. The default setting of 1.0 is way too high and makes the world and characters look dwarfed. Set 3D Field of View Enhancement to 1.1. Yes, this is pretty high. This game recently had methods and workarounds for forcing the field of view, but a recent patch disabled most of these tricks. What's good is that in this game's case, the culling caused by the field of view enhance feature is barely noticeable. Unlike, for example, Layers of Fear, which has noticeable flickering, Resident Evil 7 seems to handle this field of view boost much more gracefully. I'm also putting this value higher than the default of 0.8. Working with 16:9 resolutions as opposed to 1280 by 960 like VorpX suggests, I found it easy to get a bit more image surface while still avoiding any noticeable field of view culling glitches. Under Image Settings, set Crystal Image to off if you're at 1920 by 1080, but I do recommend it on normal if you're at 1600 by 900 or 1280 by 720. Set Image Zoom to 0.73. This might be low, but what I like about this setting is that we're taking every possible available pixel from the game and squishing it with as little noticeable edges as possible. Then a little trick to counter the visibility of those edges. Turn background on to ambience. This will add a sort of gradient color background based on the game's image itself. It's just enough to help you forget about any visible edges as you play. This is one of the reasons why I opted to use 16:9 resolutions instead of the suggested 1280 by 960. Resolutions outside of the 16:9 aspect ratio produce black bars in the image that correct the output to a 16:9 in a letterbox. This would result in the background ambience effect not being visible at the top and bottom of the image, thus defying its own purpose. Last but not least, pass by display settings, and while you'll need to leave direct mode async render to on, do experiment with direct mode fluid sync. For a rare time, I've found fluid sync to behave well with this game. It's especially useful if you push your graphics settings to the point where the game begins to perform at less than 50 frames per second. This option will ensure to smooth performance out by syncing at half rate, then applying a synchronous time warp. However, I do suggest you opt for a better performance rather than use this. Using VorpX's frame rate meter, which can be loaded by hitting Alt and F, try to aim for quality settings that land you an internal game frame rate of over 50 frames per second at all times. Mine is fluctuating between 55 and 90, which is pretty much perfect and doesn't require fluid sync to be on. I know that this game's head tracking is being handled by VorpX differently than usual, but I do recommend leaving mouse sensitivity on default so the head tracking sensitivity matches perfectly out of the box. Go ahead and hit OK and save. Do a quick Alt-Tab out of the game and Alt-Tab back in to make sure it's going to run smoothly. For the gameplay, an important note, this is a manual VR configuration, so again we're faced with the mouse pitch offset issue, where your in-game view can be looking up or down while your head is actually at level looking straight ahead. To deal with this, I personally use a modified mechanical ball mouse, which has the pitch axis or the vertical axis disabled, making sure my mouse only sends X-axis or horizontal axis data to the game. Even with such a solution, I definitely recommend having the normal mouse within hand's reach, because the prompts, the inventory screen, and the short animations may force your pitch in a mismatched position again, and thus readjusting will be necessary. You are now ready to put on your adult diapers because the game should work great from here on. Jokes aside, I did encounter one major issue, and I'm not sure if you will too, so I'll just share my solution, so keep watching, we're not quite done. This did not happen to me on a consistent basis. I seem to have found a really obscure Steam bug. There it goes. Look at cancer. Look at the cancer of mankind go. This is the biggest joke I've ever seen. This thing is designed to be cancer. During one of my sessions, the Steam screenshot feature went absolutely haywire, taking screenshots on a loop the whole time I played. This only seemed to be happening if I was using SteamVR. Eventually, because of the screenshot loop feature, Steam would crash and that would take the game down with it. It could have been a bug during the May 2017 double rollback fiasco, I'm not sure. But if this happens to you, find this folder in Windows Explorer. I'll show the name on the screen. In there, you'll find a folder called 418370. Go ahead and deny all write permissions to all Windows users on the 418370 folder. Steam will then finally stop acting like a pre-alpha piece of garbage. Another issue I must mention, one that could make your game slow as hell, VorpX seems to be resetting the resolution scale option in the graphics of the game every time you start it. It sets a value of 1.3, which can be too high if you're running at 1920 by 1080. Make sure to enter the graphics option at the title screen of the game before each play session to verify and/or correct this. The graphics options menu on the title screen is hard to see in VR. Closing your left eye to see the right side options is very much advised, but it's better than the pause menu options, which simply won't be usable at all in VR. On a side note, go ahead and ignore the few warnings VorpX will give at the game's start, as we are using a custom configuration and we don't need to worry about those. I hesitated buying this game because I'm not gonna lie, I hate Resident Evil. Crippled movement speed and controls and low ammo is not the kind of thing that makes a game scary to me. It just pisses me off, and it seems to be a centerpiece of this franchise. Now, granted, this time around, from the very little I had seen, I was hopeful that Resident Evil 7 would at least take a more classic horror approach to things, at least based on the videos and trailers. So I made the move, bought and installed the game, and began a new session at that moment with the stock VorpX setting. Despite the letterboxing, the stock configuration really was acceptable enough to start playing like that before I started researching what changes I could make to improve things. The few outside opening shots were a welcoming sight. For one, it made me realize that I was probably running one of the most graphically advanced pieces of software in virtual reality. Despite the imperfections on the stock VorpX configuration, I could tell that visually I was in for a treat. Then I met Mia. Holy shit, Mia! Actually scary. Oh, fuck.
It's okay, it's me. I know you didn't mean to hurt me.
No, I'm not.
You shouldn't have done that! It fucking hurts!
What the fuck? What the fuck? Was that supposed to happen, or am I just getting killed gruesomely? I'm getting killed gruesomely, am I? I'm getting killed gruesomely. There we go. Now I'm kind of sold. This really doesn't feel like Resident Evil. This actually feels like an extreme horror movie. Holy shit, does Mia put you in your place, almost single-handedly telling you what this game is all about. What the fuck is this?
Eat it. It's good.
What am I doing? What is this? What is this? Why am I... What is this? I don't know what this is. I don't know you. Leave me alone. No. Oh, yuck. Oh, what the fuck? That legit looks disgusting. I'm gonna vomit. Okay, no.
He's not eating it, Jack! He's not eating it! Get the hell up, Marguerite! For him! Get the hell out of here! You're a son of a bitch! Oh,
Yo, what the fuck? Yo, I don't want to eat that. Stop making me eat that shit. What the fuck? Stop! What the horse shit? Then though, then what the fuck? How do I say this? I'm in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I am stuck inside that world that's all around me and I'm the captive. This is freaking awesome! It's so terrifying, I can honestly equate this to driving a car upwards of 250 miles an hour, but without the actual deadly consequence. This is very much a type of horror I've been specifically craving for VR, and it looks like for the most part I can now fully enjoy it. The little issues are easy to get past, and the game is quite frankly well above anything I'd have expected, even after seeing videos and trailers. My only worry, the style of gameplay raises the rate of attrition through the freaking roof. After about 3 hours of this insane shit, you begin to lose focus and start dragging your feet, making huge mistakes and repeating things far too many times. It'll grind down your nerves quickly until you can get used to it. If you can even get used to this kind of crazy. I've adjusted to extreme paces like those of Alien Isolation, but I still have not found my groove in Resident Evil 7. It tenses the living crap out of me, and you know, VR can bring so much situational awareness advantage as you want. If you're in the process of losing your shit, situational awareness is kind of irrelevant. In this case, VR isn't an enhancement, it's a curse. It's a way to enjoy that horror far more intimately and be legitimately terrified as you are closed away from the outside world. Now, it's time to get to this game's vScore. The vScore is a rating system created to evaluate how well a game can be run in VorpX. The score is on a scale of 100 points and is based on 9 criteria, 8 that yield points and 1 that is a penalty value. The criteria are, first, the fixed points values, where a game is given all or nothing for each category. Acceptable 3D method. This is worth 30 points because if we can't have depth perception, we cannot have virtual reality. Next in is proper geometry 3D, which is worth 15 points because it brings a game to life by providing the only authentic stereoscopic 3D method. Resident Evil works in amazing geometry 3D, and in addition, some effects that usually cause trouble work in this game perfectly. All points for those 2 items. Proper head tracking. Head tracking that goes all over the place is no fun, so this is worth 15 points. This is another manual VR game that really isn't too bad on head tracking, provided you manage your pitch level somehow. 15 points here. Second, the variable criteria, where the amount of points can be adjusted for each item. Sufficient field of view. A game really needs some means for forcing the field of view, and because of the various ways we can achieve this, some more effective and some less, this is worth up to 15 points. Resident Evil 7 uses a lot of 3D field of view enhancement with VorpX, which we know is not perfect. In this case, however, the issues are minimal. There's almost no culling in sight, and the graphical issues introduced by the feature are little to none. 8 points for this category. Proper 3D hands and weapons. This has over time become a nice to have for third-party VR as it's quite rare, but gets a game up to 5 points for having it right. Look at this, the scale is nearly perfect on the weapon and hands. But what's this? What's this there? Oh god damn it, why does it have to be a smeared outline around the hands like that? Really, this is yet another testament to how rare good hand models are with VR injection. However, this is nowhere near as bad as others we've seen, so 3 points for those. Proper shadows and graphics. Good shadows are hard to come by in VR, especially dynamic ones, so a game can gain up to 5 points on those. Okay, putting aside the gun layer issue, wow! For the first time, we don't have to kill off a single thing except the effects that cost too much to run in VR. Jeez, does having dynamic shadows in VR working perfect in 3D look great. It's not just great, but it helps a good deal with the immersion. Seeing your own shadow scrolling along the walls is really cool. 5 points to Resident Evil 7. Proper user interface and heads-up display. Being able to see your health, ammo count, and such is a plus, isn't it? Up to 5 points for how a game handles a heads-up display. This interface is... it's just not perfect. First off, most of the menus will be busted in VR, and second, there are some things that are hard to read on the main HUD. Mainly the small ammo total number is, well, it's too freaking small. 3 points here because all in all, the game will likely not rely too much on in-game displays. Direct VR bonus. Direct VR makes the process of setting up a game much easier and often delivers perfect head tracking. Based on how a game supports it, it can get up to 10 points in bonus. Now, believe it or not, I hesitated here. I wanted to give the game a small bonus. No, it doesn't support Direct VR, but the thing it does automatically to your configuration file, I've never seen that feature before and it's pretty cool. I would obviously eventually see that as being a component of the ultimate Direct VR package. However, I won't break any rules with the score. No Direct VR bonus because we really don't get those advantages in Resident Evil 7. Last, the penalty. The penalty criteria exists to offset a game's score due to glitches and or major issues. Up to 10 points can be withdrawn. This anti-aliasing is really painful. Things look so great in this game, I encourage everyone to try and find out how to turn that crap off. I know the configuration file likes to rewrite itself with this game, so removing it there might not work, but I do hope we eventually see, for example, flawless widescreen support this game and have a few extra tweaks of the sort built into it in addition to field of view expansion. I'm going to take away one point, because for fuck's sake, Capcom, if we want to turn off a non-critical effect, we should be able to. Especially when it's a set of useless, terrible artificial anti-aliasing features. Resident Evil 7 yields a pretty good vScore of 78. Not the highest we've seen, not even for a manual VR setup, but given the context of why the score is in this range, the game really does deliver some excellent VR. I'd say good enough for those who've bought Resident Evil 7 on the PC, own a headset, and are dying for the PC VR version. You really don't have to wait, and I really don't think it's that big of a spoil to play it this way in VR before official support comes out. In fact, I'm so afraid the gamepad cancer affects the official Resident Evil 7 VR for the PC, it'll probably do motion controllers, but for seated VR, they're going to remove mouse and keyboard and require X-input gamepads like I've seen so many times before. The gamepad shit is getting old. Having this option will definitely remain valuable to me if that's the case. I'm probably going to post some gameplay of this amazing horror shitfest, as it definitely is something I'll want to have record of, even for myself. I've already featured a few clips of my first reactions in this very video, and I'm sure I'll have more of those along the way. I really hope the game keeps up the tension. Alright, we're done, folks. Thanks for watching yet another VorpX game tutorial. I, by the way, won't be responsible for any various bodily fluids and or solids you need to clean up after playing this game. Enter at your own risk. You've been watching Stereo 3D Productions, and I shall see you next time.